They rejected me, and that was the best thing they did for me. The empty chest after a no arrives like a cold wave that consumes any trace of inner warmth, leaving only the raw sensation of being adrift in a turbulent sea. The shock comes the instant the refusal echoes in your body, even before reaching your mind, as if the soul first perceives the hole opened by the negative, and only then does thought rush to find explanation. The visceral wound announces the end of a cycle of emotional trial and error, and in this sharp silence, the perception arises that you do not control others' tide, but you can learn to steer the rudder of your own life. It is not the turbulent sea that takes the boat off its rudder, but the ignorance of how to handle it, Seneca teaches, like one guarding the compass in a storm. Rejection, far from punishing, pushes you to take inner direction and recognize the power that sprouts when we choose not to be carried away by the fury of external waves. It is in this moment of introspection that freedom emerges. By accepting that the wind can blow against us, we gain the chance to adjust the sails and find previously unexplored routes. Epictetus reminds us that it is not others' attitudes that hurt me, but the interpretation I make of them, revealing the key to reframe the weight of the no. When we stop carrying the burden of others' judgment and begin to rewrite the meaning of each refusal, we discover an unprecedented freedom, the freedom to give the no the value that serves us, not the one that defines us. In this movement of reinterpretation, the wound of the empty chest transforms into a portal of self-knowledge, opening space for us to hear for the first time the firm pulse of our own courage in the face of the storm, the hidden wound behind the no. The chest tightens even before the brain processes the silence. There's a chill that settles in the space between you and the other, as if each breath were sucked by an invisible vacuum. The pain of offering your best and feeling discarded echoes in your body. Facial muscles tense, your stomach faltered, and the attic of your heart seems to beat unsupported. This visceral wound appears when the no is not just a word, but a silent blade that reminds you of your own vulnerability. In this emotional gloom, the impulse to illuminate the darkness with explanation, proofs of worth is born. Mentally, you construct arguments, replay conversations, and rewrite never-sent messages, believing that an extra gesture could dissolve others' disdain. Every attempt to fill the silence with justifications reinforces the unconscious pattern of believing that your worth depends on the haste of those who didn't respond. And in this cycle, the wound only deepens, for the hammer of refusal always strikes the same spot. Finally, there comes a moment when the effort to be seen ceases to make sense. The strength needed to beg for attention exhausts the soul, until the mistake of insisting on a stage that doesn't echo applause is revealed. The breaking of expectation happens in quietness, understanding that being refused doesn't diminish your essence, but exposes those who chose not to see it. It is in this moment of resignification that the wound ceases to be a sentence and presents itself as an invitation to seek your own light without depending on others' reflection. The mistake of seeking identity in others accept. When our sense of self relies on the reflection others give us, we become shipwrecked, adrift, waiting for an external gaze to bring us solid ground. Building yourself according to the treatment you receive is to believe that every gesture of affection defines you and every silence negates you. It's like searching for your own face in a turbulent lake. The more we insist, the murkier the mirror becomes. In this ballet of uncertainty, we forget that the source of self-esteem is born within us, not in external applause. Stoic wisdom, sometimes misinterpreted, does not invite us to harden our heart, but to choose which inner voice we want to hear. Self-control does not mean petrifying emotion, but deciding where our attention rests. If we place our worth in applause from outside, we surrender the rudder of existence to those who have no commitment to our destiny. Instead, we can cultivate within the recognition of our dignity, that which persists even when eyes and smiles turn away. Before sending another message seeking validation, there is a brief moment of peace available. Feel your pulse, the air entering and leaving your lungs, and realize that this inner rhythm is enough to keep you standing. When we hesitate for 5 seconds, urgency gives way to lucidity, and we remember that existence pulsates beyond external confirmation. It is in this pause that the difference is made. By collecting our attention, we rediscover the stable center of who we are and diminish the power we have given for years to distant voices. Thus, freed from the trap of seeking identity in others' acceptance, we take possession of our own worth. And in this regained territory, we learn that the strength of being whole does not depend on applause, but on fidelity to our own rhythm, which is enough to guide every choice. The rupture that relearns the inner turn. The instant silence follows the last attempt at reconciliation arrives like a crack of light amidst emotional darkness. When the unsent phone call is finally silenced and the finger moves away from the message button, we have the impression that the world stops for a second, opening a space where there is no longer any urgency to be accepted. This sudden pause carries a subtle invitation to look inward without expectations of return. At this moment, the exhausted energy of trying to maintain oneself in the other's space converts into a new breath, the breath of one who rediscovers their own rhythm, free from the invisible chains of others' approval. It is on this silent ground that the fertile ground of self-knowledge begins to emerge. Tired of seeking validation in others that never arrives in time, we discover that mindful attention to ourselves reveals aspects that were previously hidden under the weight of the need to be loved. Clarity emerges when we understand that the greatest energy spent on empty attempt can be redirected to nurture our own root. The fatigue of trying to be loved by someone who didn't want to love gives back strength to nurture the inner flame, awakening the awareness that we don't need external reforestation when we can cultivate our own garden. Amidst this inner turning, a new ritual of Stoic presence takes shape, dedicating 3 minutes each morning to observing the flame of a candle, contemplating its gentle and constant movement. This gesture, as simple as it is profound, symbolizes that our inner light does not depend on external fuel. As we observe the dance of the fire, our brain activates networks of calm and focus, alleviating stress and anchoring the mind in the present. The candle, consuming itself without losing its own form, mirrors the dynamic of loss and rebirth. Just as wax melts to keep the flame burning, our vulnerability can transform into strength when embraced with gentleness. And in this simple practice, we realize that the inner turn doesn't have to be grand. A conscious sigh accompanied by the gentle glow of the flame is enough to reaffirm that the value of existing pulsates within it, firm, silent, and unshakable. Even in the face of life's greatest storms of the heart, reconstruct work. In the silence that follows the emotional storm, the ritual of setting boundaries rises, rejecting invitations that hurt, closing doors without guilt, and embracing the gentle echo of one's own integrity. Each conscious refusal ceases to be an act of rejection towards those who hurt us and becomes an affirmation of who we are deep down. Back for the thin lines that define our perimeter of peace. It is in this inner forge that the heat of rejection tempers the steel of character, making us resilient without hardening the heart, strong without losing tenderness. Just as the blacksmith molds hot metal, each experience of refusal shapes our worth, removing impurities and revealing the essential alloy of the soul. The metaphor of the forge reminds us that in the intense heat of criticism and disdain, we do not melt, but we refine ourselves. And once tempered, the steel maintains its flexibility and resistance, ready to fulfill its function without yielding to external pressure. In this moment of reconstruction, a powerful question echoes: what can I build now that no longer fits under another's shadow? This inquiry shifts the focus from the emptiness left by the other to the vast field of possibilities that emerges within us. Every new project, every previously dormant desire finds fertile ground in this terrain, free from the need for external approval. And by erecting structures, be they dreams, habits, or relationships guided by one's own integrity, we discover that rebuilt self-worth is more solid, for it springs from unnegotiated authenticity. The reconstruction of one's own worth, therefore, is not a return to the previous point, but an advance into unexplored territory. It is the promise that, even abandoned by those who did not want to recognize our light, we can build inner castle where the foundation is made of deep conviction. And within these walls, erected by the firmness of self-care and compassion for our wounds, dignity remains unshakable, ready to shelter the inner flame that never went out. The discovery of an autonomous path. There comes a moment when walking in silence ceases to be a gesture of solitude and becomes a celebration of one's own pace. Every step on the ground, be it asphalt, earth, or carpet, gains the weight of affirmation, reminding you that there is no more genuine path than the one traced by your own feet. In this walking without invitation, without a look of approval, the body rediscovers its natural rhythm, and the mind detaches itself from the echo of others' expectations. It is in this autonomous cadence that the external world ceases to dictate direction, and the path reveals itself from within. The absence of invitations that once seemed indispensable transforms into freedom to create projects born from intimate desire. When time spent waiting for answers is converted into space for dreaming, we discover horizons previously obscured by empty promises. Small projects, learning a language, painting a canvas, writing a paragraph, paragraph emerge as seeds of purpose, germinating in autonomous soil far from the shadows that the other projected. With each plan conceived, we gain our own foundations and our steps strengthened. In the silence of the night, as the day's cycle closes, a gentle invitation arises to jot down 3 desires you once believed you couldn't have. Perhaps it was a lack of courage or fear of rejection, but recognizing them in words is already an act of empowerment. A desire for a solo trip, a longing to write a diary, the urge to resume an old hobby. Each holds the map of an autonomous path ready to be trodden without external permission. Thus, the discovery of one's own ground brings the certainty that autonomy is not just freedom of choice, but a commitment to one's own being. When we accept that, even without an audience, our journey has value. Each step echoes not in emptiness, but on the firm ground of genuine purpose. Rejection, which seemed to hammer our self-esteem, proved to be the force that pushes us inward, teaching us where to plant our feet firmly even when the world falls silent. The coldness of the negative became the warmth of self-knowledge. Each time the other turned their face away, we discovered a piece of courage that was previously hidden beneath the fear of not being accepted. That emptiness in the chest caused by the no now echoes as a reminder of our ability to transform pain into movement towards our own worth, free from external applause. Seneca would say that the winter that falls upon the tree does not kill it, makes it reborn, stronger in spring. And from refusal, the seed of inner maturity germinated with it. Marcus Aurelius reinforces that what is unbearable in itself finds relief when we face. Thus, by looking directly at the wound of disdain, we learn to build our intimate fort. Today, after all the closed doors, we remain standing, not because we ignore others silent, but because we listen attentively to the confident pulse of our own heart.